ARMS is quite the tragic case. It went just as quickly as it came, and whenever anyone talks about it today, they're usually not very positive. ARMS was one of the initial first-party titles and new IPs to release on the Nintendo Switch, so a ton of people were excited for its launch. ARMS' crazy-looking gameplay, lively character designs, and beautiful locales created this infectious atmosphere that left me and so many others hungry for more. Unfortunately, the game ended up being a total disappointment to me. ARMS is by no means bad, but that doesn't mean it's particularly good either. There's a major lack of substance here. The game's insanely fun starting out, but the limited complexity of its mechanics and somewhat gimmicky game design left me feeling bored after a couple of play sessions. I only played ARMS for a few months, dropping it entirely after Splatoon 2 released, and eventually trading it in for Smash. After an ARMS character was announced for the second wave of Smash Bros. DLC, I felt inclined to dip my toe back into the ARMS pool, and it was then I got the inspiration to make this video. As a game, I still feel the same about ARMS, it's fine, but when taking a step back and looking at it as a universe, I can't help feeling anything but impressed. Before I begin breaking down this world, I need to explain a couple of things about world building. First, what is it? World building is simply the process of building an imagined universe or world. In a sense, it's the act of playing God, constructing a world in your own vision, limited solely by the mind. Taking that into account, you may be asking something along the lines of, if world building is reflective of a person's vision, doesn't that make its quality subjective? Well, yes and no. Certain elements of a fictional universe are the result of its creator's personal tastes, but just like any other facet of storytelling, there's a technical aspect to world building that can impact the quality of what you create. Authenticity is imperative to quality world building, and I believe the best way to achieve that isn't by abiding to a set of rules, but rather changing the way you approach this craft as a whole. In my own work, I look at world building through three different lenses: what's foundational, what's visual, and what's auditory. These are the three lenses through which I'll be analyzing ARMS in an effort to clarify my own world building philosophy while also expressing my love for this wonderful universe. Remember, the goal here is to create an authentic world, so I want you all to pay close attention to how that can be achieved by forming a harmonious blend of the three. I'm so excited to release this video because I've been meaning to talk about ARMS for a while now, and already love discussing writing as an art form. With that out of the way, it's about time I answered my call to arms. ARMS is a boxing game with extendable arms, and it's this concept that's the driving force behind this world. The origins of the ARMS phenomenon is shrouded in mystery, with genetics, mutation, and even extraterrestrial experimentation all being pegged as possible causes. The phenomenon can affect anything organic, so plants and animals, with the oldest recorded depiction of it dating back to a millennium and a half ago. Scientists, however, claim the earliest case of ARMS may have been around 3 times older. Due to the rarity of the trait, ARMS were seen as an oddity during ancient times, but in the present, 20% of the world's population have reported bearing the trait, which is now seen as a gift. The transformation typically occurs overnight, most commonly at the age of 10, with 74 being the oldest someone's received the gift. And while possible, being born with ARMS is very rare, as there's only a 1 in 100,000 chance of that happening. Alongside extendable arms, a black spiral, traveling counterclockwise from the pupil of the bearer to their sclera, manifests. ARMS bearers have to wear masks when using their ability, as doing so without can cause their arms to unravel or even change shape. The ARMS League, the organization responsible for holding ARMS matches, supplies such masks to its fighters and any civilian with the ability at absolutely no cost. Participating in the league is expected of most bearing the gift of ARMS, and taking down Max Brass, the commissioner and champion of the league, is an honor unlike any other. ARMS matches are held all over the world, bringing a fighter from the comfort of their own home into the unfamiliarity of their opponents. The character designs featured in ARMS do an incredible job of conveying pivotal information about each character at a single glance. Ribbon Girl is an eccentric pop star, so her cheerleader-esque outfit and ribbon arms are appropriate for her. Master Mummy is a literal mummy, so his dead skin, crimson eyes, and linen wrap arms fit perfectly. Twintel is a prolific movie star and entrepreneur, owning a fashion line and brand of perfume that's incorporated into her design and moveset. Twintel's arms also didn't manifest traditionally, but instead as her hair. Hair arms are meant for someone like Twintel because they're significant in highlighting her status amongst the rest of the roster. You can just tell she's famous because of the focus on her hair and the extravagance of that and her clothing. There's so much to love about these designs, but what really makes them stand out in my eyes is how familiar they look regardless of how different they actually are. We've got a ninja, a mummy, a clown, the color green, oh no Nintendo, I hate green, and robots, all included in the same game, and not a single character feels out of place. This is the result of a detail so small, I'm sure most of you missed it entirely: in-universe brands. Fun fact, the ARMS League was modeled after soccer in the World Cup, which is why there's such a heavy focus on stadiums and arenas, as well as the existence of those in-universe brands. Each fighter has their own sponsors that provide them with their arms, the weapons, and gear. Gear is custom tailored to fit the needs of each fighter, so it's reflective of that specific character while still relating to the league because of its branding. Lollipop wears clown shoes, but they're also athletic sneakers so she doesn't stand out. Master Mummy is an actual mummy and has no reason fitting in with the rest of this cast, yet he does, because of his branded gear. Remember how Twintel's an entrepreneur? Well, because of that, all of her gear is branded with her own logo, leaving only her arms to be sponsored. This branding acts as a common thread connecting the roster, while also leaving each character enough room to differentiate themselves from the rest. It's a great example of how the value of a design could be extended past the character into the world itself. Speaking of which, let's talk about world design. Just as you would with a character's design, aim to convey important information through how a location looks. Mechanica is a great example of how proper world and character designs can tell a single story. For example, I explained earlier how ARMS users have spiraled irises. Mechanica doesn't have these, nor does she wear a mask because she doesn't have arms. She's a second generation user, someone who possesses the gift of arms through unconventional means. Mechanica was only able to enter the league because of her mech, which was built from junk collected at her father's scrapyard workshop. When she was younger, Mechanica discovered a small TV there and used it to watch ARMS matches. She would become so invested in the league that TVs could be found nearly anywhere in the scrapyard, allowing her father's employees and anyone else to watch ARMS matches alongside her. Eventually, Mechanica attended a Grand Prix with her father where the two were able to take a photo with Max Brass. Mechanica recognized early on that without the gift of arms, it'd be impossible for her to join the league. So by reverse engineering different kinds of technology found in the yard, she was able to design and construct her mechanical suit. Her mech is representative of her intellect, talent, and in some cases her youthful personality, while her arena is symbolic of her origins and motivation. I opted to simply tell you all of this information, but if you pay close attention, you'd be able to figure all of this out by simply looking at the scrapyard. You'd begin to notice details like blueprints strewn across the floor, Ribbon Girl stickers haphazardly slapped all over, and a crane-like machine similar to the body of Mechanica's mech operating in the background. You can even find a prototype to her suit and the picture Mechanica took with her father and Max Brass underneath the elevated platform. Via Dulce is another location with strong visual storytelling. The arena is wedged between Lollipop's and Biff's respective candy and cookie shops, and it's implied there's a rivalry between the two bakeries because of their close proximity to one another. However, considering one of Lollipop's arms has Biff's mug slapped onto it, and the two have collaborated on a few circus performances, I've no doubt it's friendly. Then there's the mausoleum in Buster Beach. This is the third time I'm saying this, but Master Mummy is a literal mummy. A reanimated corpse in the mausoleum you're fighting in belongs to him. Upon his reanimation, Master Mummy only retained a single memory, that of his family, and he only entered the league because he believed it would be the best way for him to find them. For those of you wondering, yes, his plan works and Master Mummy reunites with his wife and son at the end of his Grand Prix. It's much harder to get a grasp on Mummy's character by simply looking at his stage, but taking the fact that this was once his resting place into account, I'd still consider it thematically significant. I think this is a really interesting detail because unlike most of the roster, Master Mummy didn't receive his arms while he was asleep, but when he was dead. That raises even more questions about the arms phenomenon, with the biggest being is that seemingly random overnight transformation actually the result of one's body meeting certain physiological conditions achieved through sleep or something of the kind. And I love how I can speculate on the arms phenomenon as Arms Labs does, because it really makes this seem like the ongoing scientific oddity it is in universe. Another thing I can give it though is that the mausoleum does explain a major aspect of Master Mummy's character, which is why and how he got linen wrap arms. Earlier, I explained the arms transformation itself, but didn't address how someone's arms come to be. In other words, why does someone get spring or ribbon arms? The running hypothesis is that arms are either important to a user, like Min Min's noodle arms, or are simply the product of whatever was around at the time, like a mummy wrapped in linen. Master Mummy isn't the only one this hypothesis is applicable to, as Ninjara's chain arms were probably the result of these two statues at the Ninja College. There are only two characters in the entire game that are somewhat anomalous to this hypothesis: Kid Cobra and Twintel. I mentioned before how there's a 1 in 100,000 chance a person could be born with the gift of arms, and Kid Cobra is one such person. His status as a congenital arms bearer, on top of being heterochromatic, makes Kid Cobra quite the irregularity, and in a society where the former trait is often romanticized and heavily valued, that could lead to tons of unwanted attention. As such, Kid Cobra is the only fighter who wears a mask which covers his entire face, hiding his true identity. This guy could be any color under the scorching hot sun and we'd have no idea. It's great a congenital arms bearer was included in the game's roster, as that gives the idea real weight, making it seem like more than just a concept. Twintel is unique because of where her arms manifested, not necessarily how. She is the only documented case of someone having their hair function as arms, and as such, she is another major target for examination by Arms Labs, refusing all requests to do so. The organization would deny Twintel's possession of arms outright if she didn't have spiraled irises like all other first generation users. Another hypothesis is that the irises of arms users spiral because the ability is indirectly controlled through the eyes, which played a major role in the development of the arms dampening masks. This is simply a hypothesis, so there's no telling if that's actually the case, but considering the masks work, it's safe to assume Arms Labs had the right idea. That's also probably the reason why Headlock's initial chestplate design was scrapped and it was instead turned into a helmet. Anyway, I was supposed to talk about Buster Beach next, so let's get to that. Bite and Bark's backstory is much more lighthearted than Mummy's, which fits the energetic and carefree nature of Buster Beach. Bite and Bark were a beach patrolling police duo who joined the League to get away from the stagnation of beach patrolling and back into the heat of the action. The duo showed up to their fighter inspection as one unit, eventually being found out to be a pair but still allowed participation due to their popularity. As stated in their Grand Prix introduction, Bite and Bark aren't inherently special. You can actually find robots of Bite's model posted in lifeguard chairs as well as on wooden crates in the arena's background, and apparently Bark only serves to locate visitors' lost items. But that's fine, because it's their friendship that propels them to new heights. Bite and Bark are just two best bros having a good time, and I can definitely vibe with that. As I said before, these two are fairly simple characters, so there isn't a lot to unpack from their stage. We can, however, distinguish important elements relating to the larger world. A town with European-like architecture can be seen in the background of Buster Beach, and I'm pretty sure that's Via Dulce. This goes for other stages as well, like Snake Park, and how you can see the city Sky Arena rests atop of in the background. The location of their stage is shown as a part of each fighter's splash screen in the Grand Prix, so I'm sure if someone was dedicated enough they could piece together a crude map of the ARMS world. If anyone does this, let me know, I'd love to see it. The Mausoleum and Buster Beach also share something big in common, and it's the reason why I chose these two locales specifically for the end of this analysis: spiraled plant life. The oak and palm trees in the backgrounds of the Mausoleum and Buster Beach respectively both possess arms. Is that not crazy? This is another instance of a foundational concept having a clear effect on the design of this world, and it does wonders in making the ARMS phenomenon seem truly integral to the inner workings of ARMS. There's so much more about this universe I want to discuss, but I feel like I've provided more than enough information to clearly make my point. The progression of this video so far was very web-like, as I would begin discussing one aspect of this world and then seamlessly transition into tackling another. I did this intentionally, and it's because because a properly constructed world should feel interconnected. It should feel like a web, with each individual character and location acting as strands of silk interwoven with those foundational concepts, forming a web that is your created world or universe. I mean, think about it. Whenever I would talk about a character's design or location, there was always something tying it back to ARMS' foundation. That's why I could hop from one topic to the next without it feeling jarring. Everything was related to one another, so it never felt as though I was going off topic. The fact that I could very well go on for hours about how deep and intricate this world truly is should speak volumes for the quality of this work. I mean, look at all of this. That's some damn good world building if I've ever seen any. A picture speaks 1,000 words, and if your visuals are as reflective of your world's foundation as ARMS, then you can be sure you have successfully blended the two. The only issue I have with the way ARMS does this is a lot of this information is learned through supplementary material and not playing through the game itself. Unfortunately, most of ARMS' lore is locked behind the gallery, and considering this game died only a month after its release, I doubt people played through it enough to see any of it. I mean, get this, Springman isn't a character, but actually a title, and the one we see in ARMS is the third to hold it. You can actually find one of these earlier Springmen in an ARMS Labs Confidential, but considering literally no one knows this, it's a detail that might as well not even exist. There's actually a ton of information about these characters that is entirely wasted, like how Ninjara is only participating in the league to graduate from the ninja college. Lollipop only entered the league to win the Grand Prix prize money, which she plans to use to open her own circus. Alongside being a huge fan of the ARMS League, Mechanica is also a big fan of Ribbon Girls, even going as far as to call her idol. This is interesting because Ribbon Girl has the same relationship with Twintel, who was actually her label mate before moving on to a career of acting. And after watching her movies during his cultivation, Helix developed a major crush on the megastar. Helix all around is pretty kooky because not only was he grown, but the crazy bastard was born prematurely and just dipped. Dr. Coil overall is disappointed by Helix, as she assumed he'd be a more impressive fighter, but it's all good, since he provided her with tons of data she implemented into Springtron's design. The only noteworthy detail relating to Springtron is that he was constructed using blueprints Dr. Coil discovered and stole from Mechanica when she was looking for weaknesses in the latter's mech design. Since we're already on the topic, let's talk about Dr. Coil. Dr. Coil's motivation for joining the League was to prove herself as the best ARMS fighter in history, a goal that was probably the result of her failed relationship with Max Brass. While it hasn't been explicitly stated, the two were most likely involved with one another on an intimate level, and their drifting apart was probably the result of Max Brass. The conflict between these two is bad enough, but an even larger dilemma is presented when you consider Coil and Brass are the heads of ARMS Labs and the ARMS League respectively. Originally, these two organizations were one, the ARMS Ministry, and only split after the creation of the ARMS dampening masks allowed for the ARMS sport to fully take off. The labs make the scientific advancements that allow humanity to acclimate to the ARMS phenomenon, which the League funds. It'd be unacceptable if the leaders of these two organizations were at war, because if one goes down, it's most likely taking the other with it, leading to the downfall of ARMS' society. I don't understand why details as interesting as these weren't made more accessible in the actual game. Visual world building is important, but it's crucial to understand when to simply tell information as opposed to showing. I think ARMS does a lot of showing, and this leads to it feeling very shallow. Considering ARMS is a game inspired by real-life sports, I think an interview mechanic of some kind would be right at home in a sequel. Maybe Biff could conduct these interviews, and the player can choose which questions to ask in order to learn more about the fighters and where they come from. To summarize, visual world building should always reflect foundational elements of your world, but it's also important to know how much of that should be shown as opposed to told. Only then will your efforts result in a world that not only feels authentic, but is also well telegraphed. I know nothing about music. I have no idea how to produce a song, let alone what goes into making a good one. So if you were expecting a highly analytical breakdown of ARMS' soundtrack, I can't give you that. As such, instead of attempting to talk about something I have a minimal understanding of, I implore you all to check out this phenomenal video called The Culture Behind ARMS' Music, uploaded to a channel called Scruffy. A lot of what I would like to say about music, especially in relation to ARMS, is beautifully expressed in this video, which is why I can't recommend it enough. While I am clueless about music, there are a couple of things I can explain about it in relation to world building that are much more base level. If you're coming at world building from a perspective like mine, then you're just a writer, and that's entirely fine. These ideas are still applicable to you in the world you create. For me, asking myself questions pertaining to music really helps me hone in and finalize smaller aspects of my work. It's easier for me to get a feel of what I want to accomplish with my writing when I think of music that could accompany it. I only need one song to clarify this approach, and that would be the Grand Prix theme, ARMS' most notable piece of music. I mentioned before how the ARMS League was modeled after soccer, and if that's had an impact anywhere, it's Latin America, where the sport has become ingrained into the culture itself. I have a feeling this is why ARMS' soundtrack takes so much inspiration from Brazilian music. The percussion instruments and the whistle in the Grand Prix theme, coupled with ARMS' focus on professional sports, reminded me of Latin America and soccer the moment I booted up the game. Then there are the fans. They're pretty hard to miss, so I'm sure everyone's noticed them cheering for their favorite fighters in masks and jerseys off to the side of each arena, just as we do for our sports, and it's their presence that was pivotal in leading me to developing my understanding of the Grand Prix theme. I think the most important aspect of ARMS' music is the vocal melodies. Once again, I know nothing about music, so I can't break down these melodies in regards to music theory, but I will do my best to explain my perceived thematic implications of the vocals. To accomplish this, I want to provide you all with a hypothetical. You're hypothetically at a soccer game, and the hypothetical match has just started. Your hypothetical team is up against their hypothetical rival, and the two have been hypothetically struggling to score a point the entire quarter. Right before the hypothetical buzzer blares, your hypothetical team lands the craziest hypothetical play and manages to score the first hypothetical point. What would you do? Hypothetically. Yeah, it makes sense you'd hoot and holler, but when taking the entire stadium into account, I'd imagine a chant would break out. A chant. Chanting. That's what I think the vocal melody in the Grand Prix theme is meant to represent. A football chant. You know, those verses in songs people sing during a football game to show support for their team. What makes football chants so special is the significance behind them, i.e., they're symbolic of the unity and love people hold for these teams. I'd even go as far as to argue it doesn't even matter what words you're chanting, just so long as you're doing so to begin with. I feel like when hundreds of untrained voices are chanting at once, the words themselves become hard to make out, and everything just devolves into semi-structured noise, sounding somewhat like a vocal melody. The whoa of the Grand Prix theme sounds just like something a crowd would chant at a soccer game, and I think the song as a whole is meant to be reflective of the energy present during a soccer game. The Grand Prix theme is the most prominent piece of music in the entirety of ARMS, and it does a wonderful job of conveying the nature of this game to the player on startup. That is impressive. In regards to world building, I think you should choose music you believe would be faithful to the kind of experience you'd like your world to generate. Plain and simple. Each piece of music in ARMS' soundtrack is not only critical in making this world feel alive, but also plays a major role in helping the player immerse themselves into the ARMS experience. During an interview with Famitsu, Kosuke Yabuki, producer of ARMS, made a statement in regards to the team's philosophy, where he explains the team wanted to show the world setting not just with text, but with illustrations, fighter models, and music. This is the harmonious blend I was talking about earlier. Different elements of the world coming together to tell different parts of the same story. A properly constructed world builds upon itself, with one element feeding into another, resulting in an authentic product. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now that I've given you all the tools you need and explained how I approach the process, why don't you try extending your creativity and spring into making a world of your own? I get it. Remember, this video isn't some end-all be-all on world building, but should instead be used as a reference to help you with your own process. It's fine if you don't have all the details ironed out, or are unsure how to go about handling a certain element, because what's important is having a clear vision of what you want to be accomplished. After that, it's just a matter of finding your stride. As for ARMS as a game and franchise, I desperately hope we get a sequel. This is too good of an idea to let die, and I want to see it reach its fullest potential before the series is cancelled altogether. I have a ton of ideas for how Nintendo could blow an ARMS sequel out of the water, but this video is already pretty long and I want to move on to other things for the moment. All I'll say is Smash has provided Nintendo with another opportunity to get ARMS back into the public eye, so make the best of it. Don't let this wonderful world go to waste.